Welcome to the service of Neshoba Unitarian Universalist Church in Cordova, Tennessee, the Church of the Valley, if I may say. I am the Reverend Beth Lefever, pleased and privileged as always to be the minister of this congregation, and I am so very glad that you have joined us here this morning for our online service. Our opening words are adapted from Rumi, 13th century poet, Islamic scholar, and Sufi mystic. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. Let us be in worship together. And now Cindy Murray will light our chalice.
Hello, good morning. I have a poem here from Rumi as we do the chalice lighting today. It's translations by Coleman Martz. And this poem just really spoke to me during these troubling times, and let's see if it has meaning for you. So as we light today's chalice, reflect on these words. How does a part of the world leave the world? How can wetness leave water? Don't try to put out a fire by throwing on more fire. Don't wash a wound with blood. No matter how fast you run, your shadow more than keeps up. Sometimes it's in front. Only full overhead sun diminishes your shadow. But that shadow has been serving you. What hurts you blesses you. Darkness is your candle. Your boundaries are your quest. I can explain this, but it would break the glass cover on your heart, and there's no fixing that. You must have shadow and light source both. Listen and lay your head under the tree of awe. When from that tree feathers and wings sprout on you, be quieter than a dove. Don't open your mouth for even a coo. So if you would please say with me the affirmation of covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God.
The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. Once there was a tree. And she loved a little boy. And every day the boy would come and he would love to gather her leaves and make them into crowns and play king of the forest. He would climb up her trunk and swing from her branches. And eat apples. And they would play hide and go seek. And when he was tired, he would sleep in her shade. And the boy loved the tree very much. and the tree was happy. But time went by, and the boy grew older. And the tree was often alone. And then one day, the boy came to the tree, and the tree said, "Come, boy, climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and eat apples and play in my shade and be happy." "I'm too big to climb and play," said the boy. "I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money. Can you give me some money?" "I'm sorry," said the tree, "but I have no money. I have only leaves and apples. Take my apples, boy, and sell them in the city. Then you will have money and you will be happy." And so the boy climbed up the tree and gathered her apples and carried them away. And the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and the tree was sad. And then one day the boy came back, and the tree shook with joy. And she said, "Come, boy, climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and be happy." "I'm too busy to climb trees," said the boy. "I want a house to keep me warm," he said. "I want a wife, and I want children. And so I need a house. Can you give me a house?" "I have no house," said the tree. "The forest is my house. But you may cut off my branches and build a house. Then you will be happy." And so the boy cut off her branches and carried them away to build his house. And the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and then he came back, and the tree was so happy that she could barely speak. "Come, boy," she whispered, "come and play." "I am too old and sad to play," said the boy. "I want a boat that will take me far away from here. Can you give me a boat?" "Cut down my trunk and make a boat," said the tree. "Then you can sail away and be happy." And so the boy cut down her trunk and made a boat and sailed away. And the tree was happy, but not really. And after a long time, the boy came back. "I'm sorry, boy," said the tree, "but I have nothing left to give you. My apples are gone." "My teeth are too weak for the apples," said the boy. "My branches are gone," said the tree. "You cannot swing on them." "I'm too old to swing on branches," said the boy. "My trunk is gone," said the tree. "You cannot climb." "I'm too tired to climb," said the boy. "I'm sorry," said the tree. "I wish that I could give you something, but I have nothing left. I'm just an old stump. I'm sorry." "I don't need very much now," said the boy. "Just a quiet place to sit and rest. I'm very tired." "Well," said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could, "well, an old stump is good for sitting and resting. Come, boy, sit down and rest." And the boy did. And the tree was happy. The end.
An African American spiritual says you gotta do when the Spirit says do. As the Spirit moves you, the Spirit of good, the Spirit of right, the Spirit of giving, of love, of community, please give to this church in this, our morning offering. You may donate via the methods in the graphic, and please know how very grateful we are. We can't do it without you. My reading this morning is excerpted from The Rocking Chair, number 206, by author and psychotherapist Frank Morris. The summation of mental health is to live in perpetual gratitude. No matter the difficult situation, the amount of bodily suffering, or even experiencing the bad news of a terminal illness, the first sentence holds. For those who have surrendered the fantasies of a given religion and no longer live in manufactured illusion, the truth of pervasive, sensorial, deep, kinesthetic appreciation for being part of the Earth experiment and the grandeur of evolution is purely enough. 500 years of science have given us insights into both macroscopic cosmic marvels and the microscopic manifestation of life forms. To think that this Earth has been circling the sun for 4.5 billion years, to realize the utter marvels of geology, to look at a mountain and understand its origin and history, to accept the sheer miracle of water which none of us can do without, is to be grateful to be part of it. Earth itself is magnificent. Each of us is related to every other form of life because we all had a common ancestor who emerged about 3,800,000,000 years ago. Native American tribes had the intuition of the grandness of each tree and life form. Mystics across eons have extolled life itself, and poets have spoken such lines as "a nun breathless with adoration," all murmurs of deep appreciation. Please do not go off on some semi-intellectual blather about animism. The fact is that each form is traceable back to one common ancestor. And if that does not give you pause, does not awaken forth a cessation of academic chatter, while leading you to ponder the magnificence of being a part of the entire life experiment on Earth, I worry about your mental health. Mental health means acceptance of what is. Furthermore, if we have learned our lessons across the decades of our lives, we know that no one can swim against the river of time. You either go with it or flail about. Sure, sometimes the current flows entirely too fast. There are rocks in the river's course that wound, and yes, there are waterfalls which are pretty to look at, but can throw all of us off true center. Bobbing up again, however, we learn to accept those tumbles, just as a child of 1.5 gets up again and tries again. Boo-boos happen to all of us, but we do not lose ourselves in narcissistic pity. Rather, we get up and go again. The child's developmental progression has wisdom in it. Is there one lesson which can teach us to be grateful in experience of each day? If there is, I certainly do not know it. Rather, look at your scars on your body, each scar with a story, and some scars bold and ugly that in old age you cannot even recall the occasion which left a remembrance in your flesh. Who among elders is free of a history with a broken bone, a failed relationship, or a number of stories that are less than noble? But the irrepressible learning to fumbly run like a child mentally appears again with the counsel to get up and try all over until running is free of falling. The impulse to be continually curious about life and others is the photo that remains. The old mental movies of defeats in life melt away because right in this very moment, there is the invitation from the earth, evolution, and even the laboratories of science to wake up and experience the now. Life is damn beautiful. Frank Morris, author of 10 books now, was, along with his late wife Dixie, my psychotherapist a couple of decades back. They were what I like to call highly evolved souls and did excellent psychotherapy, usually in a group setting, which I was initially reluctant to be a part of, but which I found highly beneficial in that we all learn from one another's work as well as from our own. They used an eclectic approach in their work, including transactional analysis, Gestalt, client-centered therapy, hypnotherapy, neurolinguistics, body therapies, and psychoanalysis. And I am the sound and psychologically healthy specimen I am today, largely because of the work I did with them. No, but really, they were excellent. Frank was a hospital chaplain and a parish minister, I believe, in the UCC church before he got started in psychotherapy, and has lots of opinions on how we can get through blocks and childhood traumas to live a good and appreciative life. I would recommend his books to anyone interested in the topic. Living a good life is, of course, something with which most ministers concern themselves, though we differ wildly on just what that means and how it is achieved. In keeping with the nature of our faith, I believe the meaning of good life is individually decided, as are the ways in which we might go about working toward that goal. Books, the wisdom of friends, the discernment of the philosophically astute, experience, and nature are among my chief teachers, and most recently also a book I discovered on Stoicism entitled A Guide to the Good Life, The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy by William B. Irvine. If you believe, as I did, that Stoicism is a kind of grin and bear it philosophy, that's not actually the case. That might be more in line with the Cynic philosophy, named after the gymnasium in which Cynics first met. The Cynic philosophy uplifted the teachings of poverty and the rejection of all material goods, including housing. They particularly believed in evangelizing and pronouncing judgment on the ways others lived their lives, regarding greed and the accumulation of wealth especially. They often met with hostility and insult because of these practices. One of the most well-known cynics, Diogenes, lived in a tub on the streets of Athens and ate raw meat for nourishment. He dedicated himself to sufficiency, austerity, and shamelessness, which gives you some ideas as to the Cynic philosophy. Stoicism, however, and they too were named after the location where they first began to meet, allowed for wealth and the accumulation of property, as long as, and this is key, they did not become too attached to such things. Much like Buddhism, attachment was the thing to avoid. Famous Stoics you have likely heard of include Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Stoics uplifted virtue and tranquility, believing that one led to the other, and holding human beings to be a rational species, they believed in logic and reason. Stoics also believed in physics, studied physics with more than a little enthusiasm, believing that physics could teach followers the purpose for which they were created. But in time, virtue and tranquility took center stage, Tranquility meaning the intentional putting away from oneself negative emotions such as anger, jealousy, fear, and sorrow. Stoics emphasize joy as internal rather than external and believed that reason could be used to drive away negative emotions. They believed that one could enjoy the gifts of life, such as family, friendship, and material goods, but taught that one should pause periodically and regularly, using reason and imagination to consider the loss of those gifts. That was one way to keep unhealthy attachment in check. Irvine, in his book, suggests one way to do this is to use negative visualization, pondering the worst that can happen, not all the time, but for a few minutes, here and there throughout the day or the week, pondering the worst that could happen. By doing so, we can lessen the impact of the bad things that inevitably will happen on occasion throughout our lives. This is contrary to my belief that we tend to draw to us that which we think about, but it is another way of approaching the anxiety that accompanies so many of us in the living of our lives. I will have to read more and consider more before embracing a practice so contrary to my usual philosophy and meditative practice, but I will do that because learning and growing and changing is what it's all about, yes? So while not a student of philosophy and not desiring to become one, I am interested in Stoicism, and I am glad I came across a new book on the topic. Beyond Stoicism, however, I would encourage consideration of some of what Frank Morris was discussing in our opening reading, embracing the truth of pervasive, sensorial, deep kinesthetic appreciation for being part of the Earth experiment and the grandeur of evolution. The sense of connection arising out of the fact that we are all related through one common ancestor, which emerged over 3 billion years ago. Embracing one's scars and letting go of one's defeats, and continuing to try. Paying attention is important to my philosophy of life. Pausing, taking a few minutes out to notice, to see, to take in the wonder of large things and small, the sunset, a firefly, the moon, a wildflower, an act of kindness, small or large. Even in the difficult times, there are moments to cherish, and we are foolish to let them go by without pause, without gratitude. I want to end with recounting one such moment. Many of you saw the news story, or I hope you did, of the several white police officers and community members in Cary, North Carolina, kneeling down in front of 2 black pastors to wash their feet. It was during a prayer walk to end racism. Foot washing is an act of humility practiced by some Christian denominations and patterned after the story of Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. The Church of the Brethren that my family and I occasionally attended when I was a child practiced foot washing, although my family never participated. I did participate as an adult at a Church of the Brethren I was attending before finding the Unitarian Universalist Church. I did it only once, but I cannot begin to articulate the humbling and yet very, very sacred nature of the act, both of having one's feet washed and of washing the feet of another. That white police officers chose to wash the feet of black pastors quietly, without fanfare, was one of the most healing acts I can imagine in this time of racial protest and unrest. I cannot imagine a more healing demonstration of humility and the acknowledgement of our oneness in this world, even in this time, even when things are so harsh and crazy. I am grateful for that act and for so many others I know are occurring throughout our country and beyond as we all begin to move toward justice, begin to move toward love. It is important for us to pay attention, to become part of when and where possible, but to pay attention so that we might be enlarged in light and love, thereby bringing ever more light and love into our world. That is, I believe, the way toward a good life. May it be so. And now let us move into a time of meditation, reflection, and prayer. Let us take a few minutes to be quiet in the figurative arms of an immense world, a profound world, an amazingly and ceaselessly beautiful world. Let us take a few minutes to recall that which has moved us in these past days or weeks, that which has beckoned us to great depths of emotion within the silence of our own hearts. Let us take a few minutes and simply be grateful. Amen. Until next week, blessed be.
Our world is one world. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rains that fall. Our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes with love or hate, we make a bridge or wall. Our world is one world. Its ways of wealth affect us all. The way we spend, the way we share, who are the rich or poor, who stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many holes, but where our hearts can